Well, a growing debate on Capitol Hill over encryption in the wake of the terror attacks in Paris and California. There are calls for legislation that would give law enforcement access to devices that could prevent terrorists from hiding their plans behind a digital wall. We'll explain that in a moment. In the meantime, the issue is certainly gaining some new urgency in the San Bernardino investigation as divers scour a lake searching for evidence. The FBI believes that the terrorists visited the lake on the day of their rampage and dumped phones or hard drives in the water to cover their tracks. John Lucich is a network security group president and a cybersecurity expert, also data recovery expert as well, John, right? Is that part of it?
Data recovery
professional. Thank you. So we have some live pictures, in fact, of what's happening at the lake, and they're continuing to look for whatever they think is in there. How likely is it, if they find something, that it'll still be usable to recover data from?
There's going to be a lot of variables. Number one, as long as there's no other damage to it, we've actually seen hard drives recovered from water. Now, when they take that hard drive, they're going to put it in a case with some of that lake water in there and transport it down to the forensic lab.
So they're not going to try to dry it out? Because that would be my instant reaction. You got to dry it out right away.
You got to keep it wet, and most likely you're going to keep it wet with the same type of water. And the reason being is because once you start taking that hard drive out and it starts to dry out, it starts to oxidize, starts to corrode, and those are going to make it harder to recover that data. You're going to keep it in the lake water until you're ready to work on it down in a forensic lab, and then you can have a much, much better chance. And we've actually seen that during Katrina, where you were able to get the data back.
It's interesting because often, I think just those of us reflecting on our personal devices, you think, oh, once it hits water, it's gone forever. But apparently not good to know.
Data recovery professionals can bring it back.
We've had mixed reports about what exactly these two individuals have done to some of their hardware inside their home, whether they smashed it, destroyed it. And also in Paris, this has come up. Oh, they threw the cell phone in the garbage can, but there was still recoverable data. How difficult is it in general, John, just to recover data, and how much can you actually find?
Depends on the extent of the damage. And I'm never willing to say it's not recoverable, let's not try. Years ago, the Air Force had a guy rip up and actually slice up with a scissor a floppy disk, okay? FBI said it couldn't be retrievable. Air Force went to work on it, and they got it all back, and the guy was found guilty of the homicide. So, yes, these are hard platters, but I believe that if you put your heart and mind into it, depending upon the amount of damage, you're going to be able to get that back, at least part of it.
Isn't it interesting? We have two narratives. Once you have the law enforcement saying we really need the real stuff. You need the phones, we need the hard drives, we need the computers. On the other hand, you have law enforcement saying, even if we have the stuff, we have this encryption technology now, and we can't break it. I'm so curious about encryption. How good is it? Just, you know, small businesses setting up encryption where you and I can talk to each other and no one else can see it. How good is that?
This is nothing new. Back in 1994, when I worked the Edward Leary case, New York subway bomber, we had encrypted files off of his. They sent it down to Washington. Now, encryption wasn't as great as it was today, so the CIA, I believe, who got involved with it, was able to decrypt those files and get it back to the New York City Transit Police. But my point about that story is there's nothing new with this today. I mean, this has been going on for years, and it's going to be getting worse, because even if you use an encryption, you could use it 2 or 3 different times using different methods. It's going to be tough. Once you break one, you still got another encrypted document.
When lawmakers are saying, well, we need to make sure that law enforcement has access to your devices, or that we have certain laws that if you're a company that makes encryption or encryption platforms, that you have a certain amount of responsibility to work with law enforcement.
Sure.
What about that? What do you think is realistic?
Well, here's the problem with that. Let's say that we're talking about 2 entities that have set up a virtual private network, a VPN, which is an encrypted session. You can't see what's going through that, right?
We're talking to each other.
So we work with the hardware people to find out how to decrypt that, only to find out that some of the documents we were sending through that VPN were encrypted using a different type of technology and a different method altogether that has nothing to do with the manufacturers.
Do you have to be a computer genius to know how to use this encryption technology?
No, it's so easy today. It is absolutely so easy. You can just right-click on something, say encrypt, give it a password, and the longer the password, the harder it's going to be to recover.
So quickly, John, before I let you go, how do we make sure we stay a step ahead of the criminals and make sure that they don't get it?
It's not going to be fixed now, because we have an administration right now that doesn't even recognize we have a war on terror, in my opinion. Okay? When the next administration comes in, instead of spending money on global warming and all this other stuff, we're going to spend a lot of resources on fixing this problem, coming up with stronger ways to break the encryption, faster ways to break the encryption. Until you put an effort forcing Apple to unencrypt its devices, it's not going to do anything, because it's going to have other types of stuff that they've used another encryption technology while sitting on Apple.
Interesting. Well, then the market demands it. The market will have it.
No, absolutely.
Whoever will be the entrepreneur out there is going to
But I do believe that every American company has an obligation to American security.
Well, we'll see where it goes from here. There's a lot of big questions being asked. John, great to have you. Thank you.